Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. Again, my name is Jeffrey Davis, and we've been speaking with Mark Furman, our legal reporter, entrepreneurship and the law, and we've been speaking about the Brady-Goodell argument. It's in New York. And Mark, let me just say a couple things before you get back to your story. I always assume, even though this is an agreement that is made between the Players Association and the NFL, that that Goodell had this power, but there's an assumption of good faith that he was going to arbitrate fairly. And I feel that's really where their case is, that he has not arbitrated fairly because he is being, he did have the power. So I think that's really where their strongest stance is, and I think that's why he's trying to get an answer to the judge. And then the other part that I've heard is that recently, all the flaws with the whole process and the interviews and non-interviews, I heard that there were 2 gauges at the game, and that when they tested the 2 gauges, they were a half pound off from each other. And so the gauges weren't accurate, that there was no policy ahead of time that Brady knew of or that the teams knew of. So they're sort of like they're punishing without a written policy, which is unheard of in in terms of management labor. Usually you have to have a policy before you fire somebody.
That's a great point. What they're relying on is, what the NFL is relying on is a clause in the player contract that says they can be suspended for conduct detrimental to the game.
Right.
But then there are these player policies that get issued each year, and there was no policy relating to, football or tampering with equipment. However, there was...
And just one more thing I'll add. I just heard recently that after the Baltimore game, where they supposedly told the Colts that they were so upset because at the end of the game, where they lost on a player changing his jersey to become eligible, Belichick's comment in the press conference was they should learn the policy manual, the rule book. They should read the rule book, and that they were just smarting from that whole thing and went to the Colts about the footballs. They just couldn't stand that comment. It's like a little inside issues, family fight.
Right. It's there is. I have read the same thing. Baltimore denies it, but who knows what's true. There was that formation issue.
Eligible receiver.
That's absolutely true. But they had different gauges, and they led to different results. And the referee thought his best recollection was the one gauge was used, but the Wells Report experts from Exponent, which is a national expert witness and consulting firm, assumed it was the other gauge, I think. And that was, and just if you test balls in a warm room and then you take the balls outside, the pressure will change.
Thermodynamics.
So there was an integrity policy, competitive integrity policy, that the players never saw, that were issued to teams, that talked about you can't tamper with equipment. But to have that as part of a responsibility of a player who never saw it is, and of course the Wells folks didn't know that when they issued the report. And
right.
So they very much focused on that. Then it turned out that that's something the players never see. They only see the rules for the players, which say nothing about equipment tampering. So then you get to, is it non-cooperation? Well, Wells said he never told Brady that there could be adverse consequences from not turning over his cell phone. And he admitted that at the hearing before Goodell. It seems to me obvious that he should have turned it over. I don't think whoever was giving him advice at the time, which is different than who's handling the case on, the appeal, did him any favors, because just the atmospherics are awful. The reality is they had the phones and the texts and the emails with the player equipment folks who work for the Patriots. So it's not like they didn't have critical information, and it's not like they couldn't have communicated with anyone else in the organization they wanted to if they weren't satisfied that they had that. But Goodell takes this giant leap, which is he goes from the Wells report saying it's more probable than not he was generally aware, based upon this evidence, which is pretty limited evidence, to Goodell basically finding that Brady is aiding and abetting. He's the conspirator. He's the cause.
If somebody else is dealing with arbitration, partnerships, contracts, how do they find you at Tarlow Breed Hart and Rodgers?
I can be reached at 617-218-2025 or at mfurman, Furman, at tbhr-law.com.